Hi, Minister Joly. Good to see you. Thank you for making the time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Vassy.
Can you qualify, Minister, for Canadians watching tonight, how consequential you view Donald Trump's election to be?
It is a very important election. We always thought it was going to be an historic election, and we knew that the race was really, really tight, so that's why we've been engaging on both sides, and we were ready, and we are ready. So Canadians can rest assured.
Can you sort of describe in more detail when you talk about engaging on both sides, in particular on this side, on the Trump side, what that engagement has looked like?
Well, you know, we've had this Team Canada approach with many ministers involved. I've been also involved personally, the Prime Minister as well. Of course, I won't do any name dropping today, but indeed, we've had numerous conversations, maybe in Washington, maybe across the US, or also at the international level.
So do you have an idea, and I respect the fact that you don't want to drop names right now, but do you have an idea, for example, who will be guiding the Canadian relationship on the part of Donald Trump's administration? And I ask because I think there is a lot more sort of ambiguity around, at least from the public's perspective, around who is surrounding Donald Trump, who will be shaping his policy, versus 2016, when I can remember very clearly the Foreign Affairs Minister, people in the Prime Minister's office, they knew exactly who they were going to talk to in that administration. Do you have an idea who's going to be leading the Canada file for Donald Trump?
Well, it will be the ambassador that he will appoint to Canada, and of course, looking forward to knowing that person. And of course, it will be the Secretary of State. And now there are many, many different hypotheses of who it will be, but we will be ready, and we've been engaging also with different potential candidates.
What does it say to you that none of those people who you have been engaging with have provided assurances to you or other members of the federal cabinet that Canada will be exempt from the 10% tariff that Donald Trump says he plans to slap on all imports?
Well, first and foremost, the questions are not there yet. So the question is much more, how can we continue to work together on common objectives? We have, you know, many things that we can work together on. We have strengths, we have leverages, and also we know Donald Trump. Our government has dealt with him. We were able to get through the new NAFTA together, and therefore we know how he thinks. And myself, I'm a businesswoman. I have a family in business. Trump is a businessman. I know that way of thinking, and of course we'll work with him on making sure that this is a win-win situation on both sides of the border.
Why isn't the tariff question one that is of the moment, as you describe it, not being? I mean, he is saying that he's going to put a 10% tariff, and I know the economic argument that the Canadian side is going to put forward, that it makes things more expensive. That hasn't swayed him yet, because many people have been making that argument over the last 3.5 months. He says he's going to put that 10% tariff on all imports. The Chamber of Commerce estimates that's going to cost the Canadian economy $30 billion. Again, my question was, why hasn't your government been able to get any kind of assurance from anyone around him that we would be exempt from that, given the relationship, as you describe it, being so strong and interdependent?
Well, first and foremost, I think President-elect Trump needed to campaign, so he did, along with his team. And now I think he went to bed very, very late last night. I think it was a very short night, and so right now it's the day after, and he's connecting with different people that will potentially be part of his administration, and also with leaders around the world. So one day at a time. So I won't go into any form of speculation, but what I can tell you is that we already know that more than 35 states in the US have the #1 country as a market where they export as Canada. We know also that we have very strong commercial ties, but also investment ties. We have people-to-people ties. This is a Team Canada, again, approach that we will have this time, and engaging with people at the mayoral level, so at the local authority level, at the state level, working on our side with premiers, and of course with the business community unions, etc. So if there's one country on earth that understands the US, Vassy, Canadians can be assured that it is us, it is Canada. And so what I've been doing also, and that's very important for people watching at home to understand, is that I've been receiving a lot of calls from all around the world today, and also, of course, in the previous days and weeks since the beginning of this campaign, of how to deal with a potential Trump administration and how to deal with a potential Harris administration. And so we've been engaging with many friends and allies around the world on this too.
When you reference the potential point person on Canada, that person in 2016, when NAFTA was being renegotiated, was Ambassador Kelly Craft. I spoke with her just a few moments ago, and again on the weekend actually, and in both interviews, she emphasized, to a greater degree than I've ever heard before, the fact that if Canada wants to continue being a trading partner, as you have just described it, with the United States, that the expectation from a Trump administration will be that we increase defense spending, and we do it much sooner than the 2032 target that your government has set out to meet the NATO commitment of at least 2% of GDP on defense spending. Is your government minister prepared to speed up that timeline?
Well, we're definitely prepared to making very important investments, generational investments in defense. And we have to. To be frank, for a long time we didn't enough, and that's not only us, it's many conservative governments before, and this is something that Canada has to take more seriously, and that's why we presented a new defense policy where, Vassy, it's important to remember, we're tripling the defense budget. And we're tripling the defense budget, investing where? In North America, in our defense, in the Arctic, in making sure that we're strong together, Canada, US. And that's why I say we can work together, we can work with this administration, because we know that national security and defense is a priority for them, it is a priority for us, and that's why by doing so, we will create jobs at home and we'll create jobs in the US, and we'll be able to work together on making sure that ultimately Canadians and Americans are protected.
And I do understand the argument you're putting forth. I also understand that defense spending has increased, at least the allocation of money towards defense spending in general, has been lacking in some years. But I can tell you clearly from speaking to the person whom is still a very close confidant of Donald Trump, that she says it's not enough. What you have just laid out is not enough for Donald Trump. So once again, I'll ask you, are you willing to go beyond the plan that you have set out so far, beyond the target that you set out in July, for which we actually don't have many details about how you're going to reach it? Are you willing to reach that 2% target sooner than 2032? Yes or no, Minister?
Well, the goal is definitely to increase our defense spending and to adapt to what's going on geopolitically. And as the foreign minister, I must say that I'm very concerned about what's going on in the world right now. And I definitely think that we need to do more when it comes to defense spending. And sometimes it's been rare in the past in Canada that the foreign minister and the defense minister would agree on this, but I completely agree on this. And I have a quite hawkish point of view on this, because I really, really think that when at the time the way North America was thought to be defended was through NORAD, well, we now need to update our approach. We need to deal with adversaries such as Russia, because Russia is a neighbor, and also the fact that Russia is allowing China way more in the Arctic. And so the Americans, notwithstanding the administration, because to be frank, our geography doesn't change while administrations change, have been telling us that they want us to step up our game in the Arctic. And that's what we're doing. For the first time, not only are we investing and tripling our budget in terms of defense, but also we're investing in us here at home. I think a lot of Canadians have been seeing that we're invested also through NATO and investing in Ukraine, investing in Indo-Pacific. We will do that. But fundamentally also, it's about us, it's about North America.
Just one final question, and to respectfully challenge you, Minister. Again, I'm not taking away from the additional investments that you've made in defense, but they don't come anywhere close to what NATO's expectations were. Prior to July, your government had not even assigned a date by which they would meet the NATO targets. If you were in fact planning for the possible eventuality of another Trump administration, would that not have been something you took more seriously in the last number of years, instead of waiting until just this July to say, okay, we'll finally do what we agreed to do almost a decade ago?
I think what the Americans will look at also is how much we're investing here at home, and also how much that will have in terms of impacts in our economy and their economy. Buying 88 F-35s is creating jobs on both sides of the border. When we're investing in icebreakers, and let's remember, the US doesn't have a lot of capacity in terms of icebreakers, we do. And so we can help them through that, and we'll be creating jobs, of course, in Canada, but also on the other side of the border. And that's why we signed the new ICE Pact agreement with the US and with Finland. And we'll continue to do that as a procurement process is speed up, because of course we need to make sure that while we're increasing the budget, that we're allocating the money, that we can hire new people being part of the Canadian Armed Forces, which is a fantastic opportunity, and also we're investing in the equipment that is much needed.
Just very quickly though, does that, can you be explicit? Are you willing to speed things up? Are you willing to spend more quicker? Because that is what Kelly Craft is saying is necessary for your government to do. That July commitment took too long to arrive at, and that it's going to take too long to get to 2032. Are you willing to change anything beyond what you've already laid out?
Vassy, you've been asking me that question 4 times, and that's a strategy of yours of asking a lot of the same questions.
Because you haven't answered.
I've given you my answer, but the question is of course, we will be sitting down with anybody that is willing to have that conversation, because ultimately this is a win-win situation. We need to invest in our defense. The US needs also to make sure that they make the right investments also when it comes to the Arctic. And so we're part of NORAD, we're part of NATO, and we'll work together.
So you are open to a different timeline. Is that fair to interpret from what you just said?
I'm saying that we're making huge investments, and in that sense, we're willing to have many conversations with the Americans, as we're always open to have many conversations with the Americans. But also, we need to make sure that these conversations are in the context of investing in our security and also reinforcing the NATO alliance.
And I understand that. I'm not trying to insinuate that it would be any different, or that we'd be investing in anything other than our own security. But I'm just confused. Am I to interpret that you are willing to go beyond what you've already laid out?
So, Vassy, we have a target. We've announced it. Right now, also, we presented a defense policy update, and that defense policy update triples the budget. So the target is important, but concretely what Canadians want to know is fundamentally whether that money will be hitting the ground. And my job with the Minister of Defense is to make sure that that money doesn't stay something that is hypothetical. It is actually creating jobs and also investing in key equipment that our Canadian Armed Forces need. So I'll be focusing on that. And meanwhile, anybody that wants to have a conversation about defense and foreign policy, I'm open to it.
Okay, I will leave it on that note. Minister, appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Have a great night.